Tonight, the post-Brexit labelling branded crazy and costly by the business sector. A call for the UK government to rethink.
It is like a sledgehammer to crack a nut when there was already a working system for delivering products to Northern Ireland.
Also making the headlines, the fallout from the Old Firm derby. Police are investigating bottles and coins being thrown and are assessing hate crime complaints.
On the pitch, it's as you were at the top of the Premiership after Rangers and Celtic draw 3-3 in an Old Firm classic.
And the busy beavers splitting opinion on the riverbank. Are they causing damage or good for the environment? I'm Courtney Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Police are investigating after a bottle was thrown at a Celtic player and coins were lobbed into the dugout at yesterday's Old Firm match at Ibrox. A number of alleged hate crimes were also reported to Police Scotland after the match.
Our political editor Colin Mackay joins us now. And Colin, there were predictions of a deluge of hate complaints.
Well, that was the prediction that came from opposition politicians before the match, and Police Scotland were certainly swamped with the number of complaints that they were having to deal with before the match. But afterwards, Police Scotland say that there was only a small number of reports relating to hate crimes. Now, the throwing of bottles and coins is much more serious. They're also being investigated by the police, and they say that one man was struck but didn't require treatment. Now, on the hate crime complaints, the Scottish Police Federation say that it's taking an extra 40 officers a day to deal with up to 8,000 extra calls in the last week.
Some people are not making complaints to the police under this legislation because they feel that they are victims of crime. They are doing so to make a political point or their own personal point, or simply in one case to protest against the current government. I would urge the public not to do that because simply Police Scotland cannot cope with the demand, and it will impact on our ability to deliver other policing services across the communities of Scotland.
It's certainly been a very lively first week. Police Scotland, who I have to once again express my thanks to, have of course been busier than they normally would be in relation to the reporting of hate crime. But of course our police service are well adept to adjusting to new bits of legislation.
That was Justice Secretary Angela Constance speaking for the first time about this, actually, because she's been on holiday over the Easter weekend, over the last week. But over the weekend, former SNP Cabinet Minister Jean Freeman criticised the implementation of this new act. Former Labour First Minister Jack McConnell warned that it could prove to be completely unworkable. Now, Angela Constance rejects that, but accepts that she has her work cut out to explain that it doesn't ban free speech, that it doesn't even stop you being offensive, but it is aimed at stopping people stirring up hatred. Now, you can hear more from the Justice Secretary later on Scotland Tonight.
Colin at Holyrood, thank you.
One of Scotland's largest dairies is demanding the UK government rethink what it says are crazy post-Brexit product labelling plans that will cost the sector millions of pounds. Graham's Dairies say the changes, which require products to carry a not for EU label, are too complex and creating confusion for customers.
The proposals are aimed at reducing checks and controls on goods moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But 4 years on from Brexit, many Scottish businesses say they're still grappling with red tape and extra costs. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
When doing your weekly shop, you might not have even noticed it yet. New, not for EU labels on some meat and dairy products. It's being brought in to smooth trade with Northern Ireland, but it's creating a headache for some producers here, especially those who export to the EU, like Graham's Dairies in Bridge of Allen.
It's going to be a lot of money. It's about 300,000 for us just to change, but our biggest concern is the complexity it's going to bring, because we have a label then for GB, for Northern Ireland, but we'll need to then have a separate label for our EU business, particularly into Ireland. It is like a sledgehammer to crack a nut when there was already a working system for delivering products to Northern Ireland.
Graham's and others in the dairy industry are urging the UK government to scrap the proposals.
We already had to change our packaging after Brexit, so to have to do it again because of now the Windsor Agreement is hugely frustrating. Even the timescale, we're talking about 1st October, and we've got to factor in potential election within that. The 1st October date is just ridiculous.
Producers say the changes won't only make trade more complicated, it'll be confusing for consumers as well. A recent poll found 1 in 5 shoppers said they'd be less likely to buy a product if it had a Not for EU label on it.
We commissioned some research that shows costs of around £150 million in the first year alone for UK businesses to make these changes, followed by £200 to £250 million a year of ongoing costs. And unfortunately, the likely impact of that will be that our shoppers will be paying more for our products at the till, and that's bad news for everybody.
The Scottish Government says the Not for EU labelling is proving harmful for Scottish business, and the impacts of Brexit are still being felt, particularly amongst those with a customer base abroad, like this retailer in Edinburgh.
A lot of the issues are around the inconsistency of the customs officials dealing with the parcels. So they're stopping parcels for no reason. They all have the same paperwork, the correct paperwork, correct codes and values on them, and the parcels are still being stopped. So they're either being delayed or they're being returned to us, worst case, or the customer's being contacted to ask to pay for things that they're not due to pay.
The UK government says it's analysing feedback from its recent consultation and will consider additional support for smaller business. Academics say although the labels may end up keeping more food in Scotland, it won't necessarily improve health.
Local food isn't necessarily healthier or more sustainably produced, and therefore kind of changing trade in this way is not likely to be kind of beneficial either for sort of health, affordability or environmental outcomes.
The new labels are due to be expanded to other sectors such as fruit, vegetables and fish from July next year, with producers now looking ahead at the impact it will have. Laura Alderman, STV News, Bridge of Allen.
From today, pensioners will get nearly £1,000 more per year as the UK government raises the state pension to keep up with the cost of living.
But pensioners claim the increase doesn't cover higher prices for basic necessities, while critics say the gains are being clawed back in taxes. Our Westminster correspondent Paris Gurtsianis reports.
The cost of living crisis is supposed to be easing, but for these pensioners in Glasgow,
5 and 2, 52.
The numbers still aren't adding up.
So sometimes I can be quite cold and I've just got to go to bed about 7 o'clock at night so that I don't burn nothing. So just get into my bed.
Well, I've got a big family, so I've always found it hard. And you're lucky if you get any money left that you can put away.
The triple lock means pensions rise in line with inflation, wages, or a minimum of 2.5%, whichever is highest. But some pensioners at this day centre don't feel better off.
You get it with one hand, you put it out with the other.
Yeah, well done to them. Put up a good bit, not just a wee bit.
We're in the middle of a really difficult economic climate, so yes, any increase to the state pension is really welcome to older adults, but what we're hearing is every day they're not able to put on their heating, they're eating one meal a day, they're struggling to pay their bills.
From today, state pensions will rise by 8.5%. The full state pension is now £221 per week, an increase of £900 per year. Those on the old basic state pension, who reached pension age before April 2016, will now get £169 per week, an extra £700 per year.
The increase is 8.5%. Inflation is at just 3.4%. It's come down dramatically because of our economic plan. This comes on top of the fact that we raised pensions by 10.1% just a year ago. So pensioners are £1,000 better off since 2010.
We've said that with the triple lock, this is something that we would continue and we'll make sure it's implemented. I'd say just have a bit of caution about what the government's been offering so far because there has been a number of U-turns.
But the Chancellor's decision to freeze tax thresholds means 1.6 million more pensioners will end up paying income tax, wiping out any gains, according to analysis by the House of Commons and the Resolution Foundation think tank. Ahead of a general election later this year, that leaves these pensioners facing a difficult call.
1-0, number 10, Sunak's dead.
Paris Gortsianis, STV News.
Now, heritage leaders in Glasgow say the city, once renowned for its historic architecture and shopping mile, is like a bomb site and has been neglected for too long, with the Avenues project in the city centre having faced delays.
But today the council says contractors return to the site on Sauchiehall Street and works should be complete by the end of the year. Caitlin Hutchinson has been finding out more.
It was once the vibrant heart of Glasgow's economy and home to some of retail's biggest hitters. But those days are now a distant memory, with large portions of Sauchiehall Street dug up and shop units lying empty.
It's just been left and abandoned. What is it like for tourists wander along here thinking, oh, okay, it's a transformation that's going through, but nothing's happening. There's no work going on. You know, what's the reason for that?
Plans to revitalise the famous Golden Z area of Glasgow city centre, Argyll, Buchanan and Sauchiehall Street have long been underway as councillors attempt to address the post-pandemic challenges that are facing cities across Scotland. But heritage leaders say that improvements are taking far too long. That city centre streets shouldn't have been allowed to fall into such a state of disrepair in the first place, and that the once thriving Golden Z is more like World War Z.
It looks like a third world country. It's definitely not in the calibre of what it used to look like. Some buildings are hanging by a precipice, and if we don't do something now, if the city fathers don't do anything, then the city is going to lose all that.
The council says it's in the early stages of a huge transformation, and while the work will cause disruption, it will result in a far more attractive, cleaner and greener avenue in Glasgow's city centre. In the capital, retailers were no more immune to the effects of the pandemic than those in Glasgow. And Edinburgh's most iconic street has changed drastically in recent years. There's been a shift away from traditional retail towards more hotels and restaurants. But for some, that's left a sour taste.
Princess Street's shocking compared to what it used to be when we were younger. Even the bridges everywhere are shocking now.
It doesn't have the nice stores and it doesn't have... I don't know, it's shabby.
You kind of miss Jenner's, don't you? But I think it's a problem that's across the country, really. What's happening in our high streets. People are going to have to get creative as to what we do with these spaces.
It'd be nice to get the shopping back, because there's absolutely nothing now. And I really don't know what the tourists make it. I mean, they've got the castle, but in Princess Street there's absolutely nothing.
I think Edinburgh's doing very well than what I remembered it about 3 or 4 years ago.
I think it is in good nick in comparison with a lot of cities I've visited.
There's undoubtedly big change afoot in Scotland's cities, but it might not be a smooth road there. Caitlin Hutchison, STV News in Glasgow.
To other stories, and Scotland is set to be hit by heavy rain over the next couple of days, with the yellow weather warnings in place for large parts of the country. It comes after high winds during Storm Kathleen caused major disruption at the weekend. An unfortunate car in Fife ended up in the water.
The numbers of hen harriers, one of Scotland's rarest birds of prey, are on the increase, but recovery still has some way to go, according to a new survey. The Scottish population is estimated to have more than 500 territorial pairs, up by 15% since the last RSPB survey in 2016. The conservation charity says new legislation, which will introduce a licensing scheme for grouse shooting estates, should help protect the species.
A great deal of work has been done in identifying the causes or the constraints on the hen harrier population, and in many parts of the country it's due to persecution on grouse moors, and this has been proven time and time again.
Other stories in the West, and a man has suffered serious injuries after being slashed with a weapon in Glasgow. Police were called to Hartlaw Crescent in Hillington at about 6:30 last night. A 31-year-old man was taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. One of the 2 late and over-budget ferries being built at the Ferguson Marine Shipyard in Port Glasgow is set to be launched tomorrow. The MV Glen Rosa and its sister vessel, the Glen Sannox, have suffered repeated delays and cost overruns. The Glen Rosa will need to undergo trials before its handover, which is expected in September. It will serve Calmac's Ardrossan to Brodick route. A professor from Strathclyde University has been appointed a special rapporteur by the United Nations. Professor Elisa Morgera was chosen from a pool of 50 candidates to become the UN Special Rapporteur on Climate Change and Human Rights. The role is tasked with the study of adverse changes of climate change, identifying challenges and raising awareness of the human rights impacts of the issue. A free drama programme for youngsters had its moment in the sun last week with its original production, The Knock at the End of the World. Toonspeak, based in Glasgow, gives disadvantaged young people a creative outlet they might not otherwise receive. Vidushi Tiwari has been to find out how its work is transforming lives.
It's the most isolated bunker on the planet. Trapped inside, some of the world's most gifted children.
I'm your rock star on TV!
Toonspeak is a project that aims to transform young lives through the arts. Some of the kids bringing this story to life have been involved with the Performance Collective for years and say their lives would have been very different without it.
It's such a great place for finding more opportunities where I wouldn't otherwise have had any. I probably wouldn't be doing as much acting as I do now because most of the acting opportunities are from Toonspeak.
I'd be doing something stupid anyway. I'd be working somewhere in some warehouse and just getting by.
We're working with a few 12-year-olds, and I keep thinking, I really wish I discovered this when I was that age because it would have really helped me with confidence levels when I was that young.
The project uses drama to build their self-esteem and helps them dream big.
When access to the arts can sometimes be really difficult for people, to have that resource in Glasgow that allows young people to get a first-hand experience of what it's like to work in the arts and to work in creative industries is crucial to make sure that we are bringing on the next generation of talent.
So often that kind of youth-led approach is kind of part of the process, but it's never truly invested in. And actually from the get-go, we have had young people really push forward with their ideas and really inform every aspect of the productions.
The curtains may have come down on this production, but for these young actors, it's just the beginning. Vidushi Tiwari, STV News.
Now, there are calls for beavers to be managed before irreversible damage is done to other species like salmon and more land is lost. Many warned of the damage the controversial creatures would cause, but those behind the reintroduction of beavers say they are a benefit to the environment. Lynn Rankin has more.
Probably lost about 10 to 15 metres of riverbank here, most of which has happened in the past 2 or 3 years.
Farmer Bob Strachan believes beavers are to blame for the drastic loss of land on the edge of the River Ericht. He's had to rebuild a flood bank to protect his prime farmland.
The beavers burrow in, that destabilises the edge of the riverbank, and then when we get some high water, the river just washes the riverbank away. There's a tremendous cost involved, and as I say, it's not one, I don't think it's fair to expect those who did not wish the beavers to be here in the first place to bear the cost of the damage incurred.
They are nature's engineers, using their huge teeth to fell trees and build dams and lodges. Hunted to extinction 400 years ago, they were illegally reintroduced in Tayside around 20 years ago. More recently, many have been moved to Speyside and other parts of Scotland.
But the beavers come back. They've come back up here and they've started to dig again.
For those that monitor the river, the rodents are a growing problem, and they say urgent action is needed.
The tunnels that they started new, they get washed out and it releases more gravel into the river. This has an impact on spawning fish, so the gravel, they could set their eggs in the gravel and we lose them on the next flood.
Closer to Blairgowrie, many believe burrowing beavers have played a part in the partial collapse of the embankment, exposing the town's main gas line. Scottish Gas Network say the washout is due to heavy rain and they're monitoring the pipe. They say there's no risk to gas supplies and a temporary fix is planned while a long-term solution is found. Nature Scott says it understands the challenges beavers can bring for some farmers and it's committed to working to resolve these. It says they've been working with farmers on the River Ericht for years and are aware of beaver activity and concerns about burrowing. It concedes that while many factors can be involved in bank erosion, it is likely that beavers may play a part. Beavers are protected by law, limiting measures to control their numbers. Love them or loathe them, mitigating the damage caused by these controversial creatures will be key if they're to coexist with people. Lynn Rankin, STV News.
So, Raman, much happened over the weekend?
Just another quiet Old Firm derby, wasn't it, John? What a game it was at Ibrox. 6 goals, 2 penalties. After VAR checks, Celtic dominated the first half. Rangers came right back in the second half, and after 98 minutes they couldn't be separated, which means Celtic still have a 1-point advantage at the top of the Premiership. Good evening. Rabbi Matondo says his late equaliser was inspired by Manchester City star Kevin De Bruyne as Rangers and Celtic drew 3-3 in an action-packed Old Firm derby. Callum McGregor says the champions were excellent in large parts of the game and go into the final weeks of the season in a positive state of mind. Jamie Borthwick reports.
A pulsating spectacle full of twists and turns right up until the end as Rabbi Matondo netted a spectacular late equaliser, which he celebrated with manager Philippe Clement.
I ran over to him because before the game we were speaking about, he come up to me and asked me about did I see Kevin De Bruyne's goal yesterday, because obviously we work a lot in training and he works a lot with me to obviously cutting in and, you know, getting shots off and keeping it low in the corners. He's like, you'll get there maybe one day, and I was like, I'll show you today. And then, I thought I showed it quite well.
Celtic had to settle for a point as skipper Callum McGregor returned from 5 weeks out injured.
You know, I wanted to be here, and you know, if I'd have missed the game, then I'd have been devastated. So, but the positive is the boys were so good, played with big personality and quality, and like I say, we've come out here in a positive place as well.
The visitors dominated the opening period, netting through Daisen Maeda after just 21 seconds. Jack Butland kept Rangers afloat with a series of impressive saves in front of England boss Gareth Southgate. A VAR awarded penalty allowed Matt O'Reilly to double the lead. Fabio Silva came close to pulling one back before the break. The hosts regrouped and clawed their way back into the contest. Silva was initially booked for simulation before another VAR intervention. The Ibrox crowd then thought it was 2-2, but the monitor showed a foul in the build-up. A breathless finale saw Abdallah Sima equalise. Adam Ida restored Celtic's lead before Matondo had the final word. Celtic hold a 1-point advantage in the title race, but Rangers have a game in hand at Dens Park on Wednesday night.
Now it's putting focus on Dundee, big game again, and all the focus is on that, not on the ranking or the points. So you will not catch me saying these things or thinking these things the next couple of weeks.
For a team that's been written off and told that have been going through the motions all year, then I think we definitely turned up, and this is the business end of the season, and we're ready to turn up.
The late show ensured Rangers looked the happier of the two sides at full time, but both contenders have the fate of the Premiership title in their own hands. Jamie Borthwick, STV News.
Well, as Jamie said in his report there, Rangers' game in hand is against Dundee on Wednesday night at Dens Park. And Dundee boss Tony Docherty says he has no concerns about the match going ahead due to the state of the pitch. Motherwell's game away to the Dark Blues on Saturday was subject to 2 pitch inspections on the day. Dundee have had 4 games at home postponed this season due to their surface.
All I know is there's a game going ahead on Wednesday night. My job at the football club is to prepare the football team for that, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'll continue to do.
The covers, are they going down today, do you know?
As far as I believe, I've just had assurances that the game will be on Wednesday night. That's all I know, that's all I need to know. All I need to know is the game will go ahead, so it allows me to prepare my team accordingly.
Now, ahead of the Scotland women's team's Euro qualifier against Slovakia at Hampden tomorrow night, head coach Pedro Martinez-Losa has played down the significance of their 8-match winless run in competitive games. The Scots opened their qualification campaign with a goalless draw away to Serbia last week. Their last victory in a competitive game was 18 months ago, but Scotland have been more successful in friendly matches since then.
For me, there's no competitive or not competitive. I'm paid the same money for competitive or not competitive. I think when competitive or not competitive is the calendar. So we have not played more competitive games because the calendar only offers us to play 6 competitive games in the last 2 years. But we prepare the games the same. The players have the same pride to represent the country. I don't think there are other words about representing your country when you are playing for Scotland.
Finally, rugby, and Edinburgh head coach Sean Everett says his players won't be short of belief when they travel to South Africa to face Sharks in the quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup this weekend. The capital side progressed to the last 8 following their convincing 33-15 win over Bayonne, scoring 5 tries at Murrayfield. Their game against Sharks will take place on Saturday with a 12:30 kick-off. And tomorrow we'll be hearing from Sean Everett ahead of Edinburgh's quarter-final match. That, folks, is all your sport tonight. See you again tomorrow.
Thanks, Raman. Well, even though we're not seeing much of it here, it seems Sean is very excited about tonight's eclipse.
Well, in just over an hour's time, we see first contact as the moon moves in front of the sun as we go into a partial solar eclipse. Close, we're going to see totality across parts of the Atlantic, parts of Canada and the US. But for us, we'll get coverage of around just 3% in Dunbar, but that comes up quite quickly to about 38% eclipse across western parts of North US. Now, of course, that's all very well, but of course it is happening during sunset. That's not ideal for us. But also the other thing that's acting against us is the cloud cover. Of course, the eclipse, eclipsed by cloud for most of us, especially central, southern and eastern parts. So no chance of seeing the eclipse here. There is a better chance across northern and western parts, especially the Western Isles. But of course, don't view it with the naked eye because it is a fairly small eclipse. I'd love to see your pictures if you do manage to see it. You can find out more about the eclipse online. Remember, it is just in about an hour's time. Let's look at the forecast.
A dry start to the day will become increasingly splashy. TUI sponsors STV weather.
So no chance of us seeing the eclipse at all, but the main takeaway from tonight's forecast is more rain again. Another week with plenty of rain coming in from the west. And where we've got those deeper shades of pink and the darker blues, we could see about 1 inch to 2 inches worth of rain through this week. So you can see particularly wet around the likes of Glasgow, down through parts of Lanarkshire, Ayrshire and inland parts of Argyll. So yeah, more rain this week. But don't worry, there are some tentative signs mid-month onwards that things may start to settle down a bit. But for the time being, staying very unsettled and changeable. So lots of rain coming in during this evening and tonight. Heavier, more persistent rain, especially across eastern parts later in the night. Temperatures about 5 to 6 degrees Celsius. The winds are going to go from more southerly to a northerly later on. That does mean that across the tops of the Grampians we'll get some snow a little bit later on the night as colder air starts to move in. So quite a cold, damp start to the day for most of us, but the rain turning more showery from the west. So for many of us it is an improving story in the afternoon. The cloud breaking up to give us some decent spells of sunshine. So not a great start to the day. More sunshine around in the afternoon, but there still will be scattered showers. And your top temperatures tomorrow, 10 degrees, 50 degrees in Fahrenheit. More heavy rain coming in on Wednesday, but on Thursday the weather should be drier and brighter, and in those sunny spells and more eastern parts, highs up to 16 degrees. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV weather.
And that's all from us for the moment. John, you'll be back with Scotland Tonight?
I will at 10:40. We'll have an extended interview with the Justice Secretary, Angela Constance, on the hate crime bill, so that's worth watching. Thank you for watching tonight. Good night.
Good night.